Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for coming today. Know that there was a big rain, heavy rain out there, and hope you guys didn't get wet. This session is going to talk about Industry 4.0 and also associated technologies like smart cities and robotics, AI, etc. It will use the perspective of social scientific implications to talk about all these technology. And so we look at some social, political, socio-economic, political, and also economic implications, as well as changes to our workplace. So it's from a social scientific perspective. This course is offered as a 2.5 credit units course, compulsory for all SUSS students, both full-time and part-time. There is also a 5.0 credits course version of this presentation that is offered by NTUC and E2I organization. And there's another version that is only 1 weekend, so it's a highly condensed version taught over 1 weekend. For more details of this course, please feel free to consult our CCPE, Continuing Professional Education colleagues who are dressed in light blue, and they'll be able to provide you with administrative details, and I'll be happy to share administrative details with you as well. All right? So, little bit about the introduction to the topic today. We all know about the rise of digital technologies and the phenomenon of Industry 4.0. How do you distinguish Industry 4.0, or sometimes known as Industrial Revolution 4.0, from earlier versions of Industrial Revolution? Now, earlier versions of Industrial Revolution, 1, 2, and 3, Industrial Revolution version 1 is characterized by steam engines, invented by the British, the rise of mass production, and also Taylorism, the ability to get mechanical machines and engines to work for you. Industry 2.0 starts to be characterized by much more sophisticated versions of mass production, conveyor belt system. Taylorism looks at stop motion studies, how you can reduce and cut down the number of steps in a factory to increase productivity and efficiency of those systems. Industrial Revolution 1.0 and 2.0 is less of something that we can identify with. They are much more 19th and 20th century stories. Now, Industrial Revolution 3.0 is something that we are more familiar with, because that's when microelectronics, computers, and robots come into being. So actually, it's not true that Industry 4.0 is the first time that machines are threatening our jobs. In fact, from Industrial Revolution 3.0, robots, machines have already started taking over some human jobs. But the difference between Industry 3.0 and Industrial Revolution 4.0 is in Industrial Revolution 4.0, machines now have the capabilities to do self-learning. They can now communicate with each other. And Industry 4.0 also allows the physical and the cyberspace world to connect with each other. So for example, if I were a designer and I design a certain object, I can send the blueprints of my design through the internet to a factory. And a factory receiving the blueprint, its machines can take the blueprints, feed it into a 3D printer. And the 3D printer will print out my design in the three-dimensional form. And then they can mail that object back to me, the designer. So in the whole process, there is no longer a need for human inputs. So this distinguishes Industry 4.0 from Industrial Revolution 3.0. Right? I can carry out the whole process without the need for human inputs on the other side. Right? So this gives me the capabilities. If you have a chance, A-Star actually has a model factory that demonstrates this capability. And sometimes guests to A-Star is able to observe such technology. So for the first time, Industry 4.0 is eliminating even more jobs from what we traditionally associate with human jobs. So this is something I've mentioned, steam engine to Taylorism to electronics, and now finally to Industry 4.0 technology. Now, one of the technology underpinning Industry 4.0 is the Internet of Things, right? So we've been using Internet since its first carnation in the 60s. Internet started off as a military defense technology in the 60s. It was designed to survive nuclear warfare, all right? You have servers that scattered around the world, and some of them are in underground caverns and in mountains, so that if a nuclear apocalypse situation happens, information can still keep running in servers that are hidden all over the world. So Internet started as a communication tool for the military, like in this sense. But since the 1960s, Internet has proliferated for civilian use. So by the 1990s, we start using the Internet for emails, for surfing the net. You know, I don't know how many of you can remember Netscape. You know, all those early search engines, all right? So Internet has connected us to make us closer together by closing up the distance when it comes to communication, all right? So we can now send messages, images, and videos through the Internet. Now, Internet of Things goes one step further, right? Internet of Things is a phenomenon in which different ordinary objects in everyday life, it could be your hot water flask, it could be your car, it could be your printer, it could be your refrigerator. All of them will be embedded with sensors and chips that allows these machines, individual machines, to communicate with each other through the Internet as a platform. It also allows us humans to, for the very first time, to communicate with machines through the Internet. One example is when I was in Hong Kong, I did research on kilns, right? Potters, ceramicists, firing pottery. So I was interviewing a ceramicist in Hong Kong, and she interrupted what I said and said, could you hold on for a second? She whips out her smartphone, and then she presses a button, and she says, you can fire now. So I was wondering what she was doing, all right? So she was actually using the smartphone through the Internet to communicate with a kiln in her workshop to start firing pottery at 1,200 degrees Celsius for X number of hours, all right? So Internet of Things allows us, through our smartphone, through our computers, to now communicate with machine. Eventually, we will have what Google envisions, personal assistants, right? Personal assistants where we no longer need to make the call, to make appointments with our barber, for dinner appointments. Instead, we can rely on our personal assistants to actually make the call and talk to restaurants and barbers to make the appointments on our behalf. This technology is known as the duplex, Google duplex. For copyright reasons, I am unable to show you the YouTube for the demonstration. But in the demonstration, duplex makes the call on your behalf to barbers and restaurants to make such appointments, all right? So that's the ultimate sort of objective, that communications between machines, between humans and machines, and between humans intermediated by machine will look like in the future, in the near future. The as I mentioned, even without AI, third industrial revolution has already threatened our jobs. All right. One of the very first application for industrial robots was actually found in the automobile sector. In the automobile sector, can anyone suggest what is probably one of the most dangerous jobs that you can ever find in the automobile sector within the assembly line? What do you think is one of the most dangerous jobs for humans to perform in the automobile industry, in the factory? Anyone? Any suggestion? Exactly, all right? So the paint job is the body paint job is one of the most dangerous. Why? Because the paint is toxic, all right? Working conditions are very poor, all right? You have paint pigments containing lead and all kinds of chemicals being sprayed in microparticles circulating all over the room, and you can breathe in some of these dangerous particles. Extremely hazardous for humans. So some academics or researchers call this the 3D job. 3D referring to demanding, dangerous, and dirty. All right? So we humans, we instinctually, for the right reason and rationally, avoid jobs that are the 3D jobs. Dirty, demanding, and dangerous. I'm sure you can think of many jobs that may fit that description. All right? Nuclear reactor maintenance worker. All right? Constant exposure to radiation. All right? Cleaning the chimney of an industrial factory. All right? With the soot, the height of the chimney, etc. These are the jobs that were targeted for replacement by robotics in Industry 3.0. All right? Just like, as this gentleman mentioned, the body parts, the car body painting task. So industrial robots was adapted and designed to complete this task, where they will spray the cars with paint pigments instead of using human workers. Of course, this increases productivity because robots do not suffer from asthma, from diseases, from lung problems as human workers do. All right? So industry or Industrial Revolution 3.0 saw more and more of these 3D jobs being replaced by robots. Industry 4.0 differs, or perhaps differentiates further from Industry 3.0 by replacing more and more white-collar jobs. All right? No longer is it just the 3D jobs that are at risk, right? White-collar jobs, accountants being replaced by accounting software, all right? Stockbrokers being replaced by a much faster AI software, you know. For the very first time in human history, more white-collar jobs are at risk than at any other point of time in human history. And that's why there is such anxieties by states, governments, big companies, multinationals to address this challenge, all right, as soon as possible. In some cases, in countries in the Middle East, they have even set up a ministry of artificial intelligence, specifically an entire ministry to look into the impact of artificial intelligence and Industry 4.0 technologies. So that leaves a very challenging task for governments and bureaucracies. They need to come up with ideas in order to adapt, in order to adjust and accommodate the changes that will be brought about by Industry 4.0. In some sense, they also have the responsibility to reskill the workforce so that they can manage changes over time, right? So some of these policies, you can see it happening quite progressively in Singapore, right? You have the lifelong learning, the concept, which of course this university embodies, that when at the point of time when you graduate from the university, it is not the end of learning, but the beginning of a continuous journey. So lifelong learning encourages people to keep picking up skills, if not update them, to make themselves relevant to the workforce. Right? So this is a university of lifelong learning. Other schemes include giving skills credit for you to pick up a skill, something that is focused on self-motivated learning. So just before my talk, there was another gentleman here who talked about photography. All right? So normally we do not think of photography as a very serious academic topic, but however, we are all wrong. Because when it comes to self-motivated learning, any skills that you pick up, if you drive it, whether it's baking or photography, if you drive it to its natural end, you can be an entrepreneur, you can apply the skills multidisciplinarily, or you can, just be enriched with the knowledge itself. All right? So lifelong learning is something that's being encouraged in Singapore. Multinationals are no exception. They are now redesigning jobs, separating what are human jobs, much more suitable for human skills, and machine jobs, things that are repetitive, manual, dangerous, dirty, demanding. They'll shift it to the machine category. All right? So what are some of the human skills that will be emphasized henceforth? The human skills that will be emphasized henceforth, which cannot be exactly replicated by machines, are skills like empathy, okay? The ability for humans to feel for each other. All right? So these are qualities that will be important in jobs like social work, okay? Volunteerism, elderly care, all right? Gerontological occupations, all right? Things in which robots and machines cannot completely replace the human touch. Right? Other skills that will be emphasized will include teamwork, right? The ability for people to work with other humans, especially in a cross-cultural, multicultural setting, right? Where there is diversity. And humans can get together to celebrate that diversity rather than be in conflict because of diversity. All right? So these are new or at least re-emphasized human skills that can be picked up, that can be emphasized through education, through human resource policies, through appraisal systems, right? In order for humans to be relevant, to continue to be relevant for the workforce. Now, the other aspect of Industry 4.0, which is very pronounced, is the advent of big data. All right? Now, if you look at the rankings of the top multinational companies in the world, especially when it comes to tech giants, and tech giants are the main agencies and actors of Industry 4.0. All right? If you look at the tech giants, you'll find that there's a certain pattern, a certain trend, that the top 50 rankings, whether it's Forbes, Fortune, or other rankings, it tends to be dominated by two countries. All right? These two countries have produced a lot of tech giants, and they are names that are familiar to us. All right? Can anyone suggest which two countries are these? Do most of these tech giants originate from? Anyone? US, definitely. All right, the most technologically advanced country in the world when it comes to IT, and the other one is China. All right. So US and Chinese companies have come to dominate these rankings. Sometimes you will find some EU countries up there. Sometimes you'll find maybe a South Korean company, but most of the companies belongs to either China or the US, all right? So many of these tech giants in these two countries, if you observe, are kind of mirror image of each other, okay? So when it comes to e-retailing, when we buy something online, what would be the biggest company that we would probably think of when it comes to buying something online? Anyone? Amazon.com, which has just become a $1 trillion company. Just lost to Apple by a very short, very small margin. All right, Apple was the first, Amazon is the second. What would be the Chinese equivalent of Amazon? Alibaba.com. New York Times just announced that the founder of Alibaba.com will be retiring, all right, in favor of a philanthropic foundation. All right. So when you talk about search engines, what is the first search engines that comes to your mind? Yes, Google, right? And what about the Chinese equivalent? Baidu, all right? And when it comes to messaging, all right, posting your materials, what would be your premium outlet for doing so that comes to your mind? Yes? Facebook, all right? Facebook, and the Chinese equivalent will be? Sorry? Weibo is messaging, all right? WeChat, all right? So when Facebook bought over WhatsApp, they have become the same equivalence of WeChat, which is owned by Tencent, all right? So it has both messaging and posting materials online. So now there's mirror image of these companies in the US and in China. Now all these companies, regardless of whether they are search engines, okay, regardless of whether they are e-retailers, regardless of whether they are places where you can post your latest updates, they all have a commonality, which is they collect data, all right? When you're sitting here in the room, your smartphone is leaving behind metadata, all right? When you purchase something online, you are leaving behind metadata, all right? When you flip through your Facebook and then you click on one of your friends' posts, Facebook records that data. When you flip through your Facebook without clicking on your friend's post, but just stopping and pausing for a while to take a look at an image, it is also recorded. All right? All these data is under the ownership of Facebook. All right? So a lot of these data are collected by these tech giants, all right? Constantly, consistently, longitudinally over a period of time. When the data is collected over a period of time, they are able to make predictive analysis, all right? So if you haven't realized by now, I guess most of you would, when you turn on your search engine, especially Google or Gmail, there are a lot of advertisements by the site, and these advertisements are custom-made for every individual. So the advertisements that are found in your Gmail and Google account is different from someone else's because it is based on data collected on yourself. All right, you have a tendency to go traveling, so more travel agencies' ads will appear on your front page. You have a tendency to buy decorative items, and so more of such advertisement will appear on on your cover page. All right, so it's individually custom-made, tailor-made. All right, all these companies can not only collect data from you individually, they can collect from an entire society, entire cities, entire countries. All right, that's how prolific they are. And collected longitudinally over time, they can spot trends, they can spot patterns in consumption behavior, not just of an individual, but an entire society. Right? So these data is very, very valuable, as you can see. Because of its value, all right, the tech sector likes to call data is the new oil. All right? Because of its value, these data can be sold to third parties. So what are some of the third parties that may be interested in such data? It could be marketing companies, advertising firms, all right, and even intelligence agencies. All right, they will be interested in such data. So it's very valuable. That's why some scholars argue that when we use our Gmail and when we use our Facebook, we tend to conceptualize and think of ourselves as the customer, right? We tend to think of ourselves, but haven't you actually stopped and wonder, why is it that I'm able to use my Gmail and Facebook for free? And one principle in life, all right, along with death and taxes, is that there's no such thing as a free lunch. Okay, so some scholars argue that instead of customers, we are actually suppliers. When we send emails, when we put out Facebook posts, we are supplying the companies with information that can be sold to a third party. All right? So instead of conceptualizing ourselves as end users, we are seen and perceived as customers. So because of this, there are also ethical questions about privacy, about confidentiality, about cybersecurity, about the ability to fend off hacking, etc. All right? So these are questions that are addressed in the course, all right? And we have class debates to talk about. There's no right or wrong answer, but there are class debates to talk about different opinions, right, about this. Some are advocates of technology, push technology to its furthest limit, and let it work for us. Others are fearful, right? What if we become over dependent? What if our data can be stolen easily, etc. All right. So there are debates that are still ongoing. There's no unmitigated solution at the moment. All right. The issue of digital gap by the government is not new. Since 1990s, the Clinton administration in the US has already detected that people, individuals, and groups that are armed with digital technology will be able to accumulate wealth more effectively than those who do not have these skills. So as a result, there is a gap in digital skills. There's a need for retraining. All right. Now, conventional wisdom is that there are many jobs that we don't normally think can be replaced by machines. All right. Right now, I think we are sort of aware that accountants can be replaced by accounting software, but there are still some jobs that we think perhaps we humans have an absolute chance in retaining. All right, perhaps. Okay, so there are some examples which I share in the course. Actually, I prepared YouTube videos for them, but unfortunately, because we are live streaming, so we're unable to show it due to copyrights. All right, so I can only describe what happens in those videos. All right, how many of you have watched the movie Morgan, 2016? The movie Morgan, Morgan, about a genetically modified human, who grows up very quickly, and using her high levels of rationality, she starts killing off humans for her own survival. How many of you have watched that? Okay, very tempted to show it, all right, but the copyright issue prevents me from doing so. So I just describe what the movie is about. Morgan, okay, is a movie trailer. All right, all of you, when you watch movies, including Crazy Rich Asians recently, all right, you could have seen trailers before the movie started, right? So trailers are a way to tease you to watch the movie. They contain scenes that poke at your curiosity, your inquisitiveness, and then you feel motivated to watch a movie. So most of us would think that human creativity in selecting scenes for the trailer, right, snipping it together in order to make it attractive for humans, cannot be replaced by a machine, right? Because this requires intense level of creativity and also resonance with the audience. Audience have to be understood, by other humans as to what resonates with them. So if you watch the movie Morgan, the trailer, which I've shown to many classes, and asked them would they watch it, it ranges from half of the class saying they are interested to watch the movie to a lot of them saying they want to watch, all right? That trailer is actually the very first movie trailer in the world to be put together by AI. All right, it's by IBM. What the producers did was that they ran 100 over trailers into the IBM program. IBM program uses algorithms to learn how to edit films to make it into a trailer. And then after that, they added in further data on preferences and constructed this Morgan movie trailer. Very first one in the world, all right? Machines are also reporting news, all right? Especially if it's not editorials, if it's not commentaries, if it's just mere field reporting, all right? They have also reported news from the field, reported plainly, all right, without human inputs, right? So if you think that any job is eminently and permanently safe from being replacement, you might want to think again, all right? So there's a need for us to cope with all kinds of jobs losses, all right, and focus on jobs where there are still shortages. Okay, jobs like programmers, coders, and some of your STEM, STEM, science, technology, mathematics jobs, all right? And emphasize training in those areas, all right? Now, robots are also convenient to replace humans, not just because of dangerous, dirty, and demanding nature, but because robots are seen as alternatives to accepting migrants, in which robots have an advantage in not being able to complain, all right? You don't need to assimilate robots culturally into society, all right? You do not need to deal with robots that may commit crime, all right, in the perception of conservatives in some of these countries, all right? So they are seen as possible alternatives to migrants. So that's why the buzzword today is on employability, all right? Governments, MNCs, they are retraining their people to ensure that they are worthy of employment, all right? So especially in the human jobs category, that they are good enough to be considered for jobs, all right? There are vulnerable groups in which we need to take care of, all right? Children who do not have access to IT equipment or IT education. Women who have been working in part-time jobs, they do not have a permanent jobs, and they are buffers in the economy. They also need to be taken care of, all right? Minorities, impoverished, the urban poor, the rural poor, all these are people that need training, that need attention on human resource development, all right? So these are coping mechanisms in which we have to get the lower skilled to come up on par with the rest of society. There is also some thinking by developed economies that it is possible to attract jobs back to their countries, especially from affordable, low-cost labor countries like India and China. Once these jobs migrate back to the developed, advanced economies, they will be performed by robots. Right? Robots can be even more efficient, work harder and longer than cheap labor in developing states. So this may also cause some developing economies to lose certain manufacturing jobs as well, and have these jobs replaced. So now jobs need to be redesigned to make better use of technology and for humans to demonstrate their skills and remain relevant to the economy. So this is a challenge, an ongoing challenge. There's no absolute solutions at hand, but it is a challenge, all right? So because of time factor, I'll end here. The other videos that I have prepared, all right, which you may be able to watch on your own, is The very first one is about industrial robot that is trained to the precision of a samurai. So the Japanese, they got a high-ranking samurai master, all right? And they trained the robot to be as precise and as skillful as the samurai master. So they can slice a long bean, slice the long bean so that the pots will come out, all right? Slice very precisely, and eventually, as the robot learned how to slice precisely, it became better than the human because the robots didn't get fatigued. Whereas the samurai master, after slicing for a certain X number of hours, soon wear down and tire out. All right. The second one is the Google Duplex, which I mentioned, where you can use your personal assistant to make appointments with restaurants, with barbers, for your daily necessity. Third one is Morgan, which I talked about. The fourth is the hybrid assistive limb, HAL. All right. HAL is a robotic exoskeleton. When you strap it on yourself, you're able to lift heavier weights. It benefits at least 2 groups or 3 groups of people, the disabled. So it enables the disabled to have normal working life, all right, by being able to use the exoskeleton to lift things, to walk. It also benefits elderly people, something very important for aging societies like ours and in other parts of East Asia. Allows them to, especially elderly farmers, to lift their heavy produce, apples, oranges, etc. And it also empowers women because when they put on the exoskeleton, they can help out in for example, the elderly care sector to carry heavier patients, to carry heavier medical supply. All right, so strength is no longer a limitation. All right, and the last one is actually the world's very first fully developed pot, fully automated pot in Qingdao, all right, in Qingdao city, all right, where there's no longer humans working in the pot, all right. The cranes are actually carrying the container boxes using sensors and lasers, so very precise laser guiding shifting of cargo boxes, all right, and there are transportation lorries that are run on AI, all right. They use AI to have fixed schedules in which they can move goods from a place to another with no drivers, right? Driverless technologies, which is coming our way, all right. Taiwan is already testing out their first driverless bus, okay. So with that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much for coming today. I have to end at 11:45. All right. If maybe I can take 1 or 2 questions. 1 or 2 questions for this session. Does anyone have any question or comment? Yes, ma'am.
The 3D to form to make it, but are those, I mean, having all this technology, but intellectual property rights, all this, are these in place to make sure that the designs are not, nobody violated the copyrights?
Copyrights for?
You mentioned earlier on about the design. Designers can send their design to places where they can have a 3D, designs to be made.
Yes.
It sounds very efficient. You send it off, and then you get your products back.
Yeah.
But then, having said that, where designs are concerned, and these sometimes it involves copyrights, and how does one get the intellectual property rights protected?
So these are the software that is required to be coordinated with the hardware.
Yeah, you can do.
You can still have this technology, but you need the infrastructure for, as you have mentioned, intellectual property rights, to respect patents, to respect the copyrights of the designer. So you need, in addition to having the technology, countries need the software, the legal software, to complement their technology so that designs like that can be protected.
Yeah, this must be hand in hand, in place to.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
But there again, there are also certain amount of human factors involved in, in the transition.
Yes.
I would say. So again, there's no 100% safety.
Yes.
Complete,
Yes.
to protect the rights. So there is still an element of.
There's always a constant battle between protecting the
Yeah.
confidentiality of your data
Yeah.
with hackers and other people who want to steal that design.
Yeah, so I'm still wondering whether, it's still, safe to do all these kind of things.
That's why the US continues to have advantage because not only does it have the technology, but it also has a legal infrastructure in place. And so you need to have a complementary, pairing up of the two in order to fully benefit from, Industry 4.0. Yes. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for coming today. Glad that you guys came despite the rain, all right? So this course is offered as a 2.5 credit unit course, compulsory for all full-time and part-time students of SUSS. It is also offered by OTCI, NTUC, and E2I as a 5.0 credit unit course. And it's also offered as a weekend course by a CCPE of SUSS. If you want to have more information, I'll be happy to share the information with you if you just come right up, or you can consult our CCPE staff who is dressed in the light blue polo shirt. All right. Thank you so much for coming. See you guys again. Thank you very much.